captures the hearts of onlookers in front of the cathedral. Then on to the reception where Joe and Jean do the honors with a king-sized wedding cake. Best wishes to bride and groom.
You know, Joe recently said to me that he was unimportant as an individual in this fight. You know, I'll have to admit to you as his wife that I don't completely agree with him on that.
Jean confided in me more than once that she was concerned about Roy Cohn's influence on the senator. She got to where she did not like Roy.
There were some rumors, just rumors at this point, about Roy Cohn's sexual preference.
G. David Schein was also in his 20s when he worked for the McCarthy Committee.
If you look at these two men, Roy Cohn was short, dark, not particularly athletic, and David Schein was very tall, very blonde, a very good-looking guy.
Schein was, you know, just a spoiled brat whose father owned some hotels in somewhere in America. Cohn looked like he was up to no good.
Cohn and Schein, his two assistants, he sent them off, and they're going to look for communists in American libraries all over Europe, and they made the laughing stock of themselves. And that did not help McCarthy's position.
Right, I think that's very good. We are here to gather information, to double-check leads we have, and to see a vast number of individuals.
We know that communists writing about the United States under the communist line to lie about the United States are not giving the true picture. And I don't think we have a right to give the German people or any other people a false picture of life in the United States and the American way.
Well, the reaction to Cohn and Schein by the European press was, I mean, they were appalled at what Cohn and Schein were trying to do, and they found it hard to take them seriously once they saw them, because they looked so incompetent and unqualified, and they kept asking themselves, why would the Americans pay any attention to these two kids? Cohn and Schein were going to London, and the British press especially wanted to pursue the case. I asked the ambassador, who was a friend of mine, so we gave a selected few the flight number, and they were met in a most hostile interview you could imagine. And I think they canceled their trip to that night. I mean, I think they just went right on back to America.
Why do you think your trip got such a bad press, both here and abroad?
Well, that's not for me to judge. I suppose the press is entitled to say exactly what it wants. There was a good deal of misrepresentation as to the purpose of the trip. Certain elements within the State Department over in Germany put a tail on us, whose job apparently it was to feed all sorts of information and stories to the hostile press. I suppose that's part of the game.
The McCarthyism, it was a very important thing in our country at that time. I did not think that the individual was particularly important. And I thought that for any president to take him on as a, you might say, an ideological opponent would end up only by increasing his publicity value.
I wish that Eisenhower had taken a stronger stand against McCarthy, but in fact, Eisenhower not only leaned over backwards, he actually caved in to McCarthy's pressures. And McCarthy was basically able to push Eisenhower around politically until the Army-McCarthy hearings weakened him. Until that point, I don't think Eisenhower had the political courage or the political strength to really combat McCarthy.
The division between the Eisenhower White House and Joe McCarthy was fierce. Eisenhower loathed Joe McCarthy. He thought he was a danger to American democracy. He thought he should be defeated. He wouldn't do it because he said, I'm not going to get down in the gutter with that guy.
Nixon's role in all of this was that once the Republicans got elected, it was his job to call McCarthy off. And he tried, and it didn't work. McCarthy had to be controlled. Alcohol is an important part of all this, too.
In addition to the 800 million in communist chains in Europe and Asia, the communists have gained a potential military base here in our half of the world, in Guatemala.
Senator McCarthy looked upon the Army McCarthy hearings, as a lot of us did, as a hatchet job. Was initiated by a famous meeting that was conducted in the office of the Attorney General of the United States, I believe on January the 21st of 1954. On that day, a conspiracy was started to get Senator McCarthy. At that meeting, beside the Attorney General of the United States was Sherman Adams, Chief of Staff of the Eisenhower White House, Bill Rogers, Deputy Attorney General, John Adams, and Henry Cabot Lodge, our U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. I believe that the President of the United States himself knew what was happening.
Finally, there is a showdown between McCarthy and the United States Army. A Senate subcommittee holds public hearings into the Army-McCarthy controversy. Each day, television brings the battle to 20 million viewers across the nation. It is one of the most extraordinary spectacles in the history of American politics.
The charges were, did Senator McCarthy and two members of his staff used improper pressure for Mr. David Schein with the Army. The countercharge was that there was blackmail on the part of the Army and the use of Mr. Schein as a hostage.
So much of the Army McCarthy trap that McCarthy fell into that brought him down, that ruined him, stemmed from the fact that Roy Cohn was a homosexual who was in love with G. David Schein.
I said, let's talk about Schein. And that started a chain of events, an experience similar to none which I have had in my life. Mr. Cohn became extremely agitated and he became extremely abusive. I pointed out to him that the national interest required that Schein be treated just like every other soldier. And he responded with even more force, we'll wreck the Army.
I do not remember saying any of those things the way Mr. Adams has them.
And as I get it now, you're saying that you have no recollection of it.
No, sir. I say I do not recall having said that.
Well, that's what I get your answer
yes,
to be
sir.
Now. You don't recall having said it.
No, sir.
But you don't deny it.
Sir, I'm saying I did not say that. I am sure.
All right, now you're saying you did not say it, Mr. Cohn.
Yes, sir. I say I am sure that I did not make that statement, and I am sure that Mr. Adams and anybody else with any sense, and Mr. Adams has a lot of sense, could not ever believe that I was threatening to wreck the Army or that I could wreck the Army. I say, sir, the statement is ridiculous.
And this was one thing that the power of television at its best, it could not diminish what people saw. It wasn't faked. It wasn't created. You were seeing it as it happened, and it was frightening and devastating.
Mr. Cohn, what is the exact number of communists or subversives that are loose today in these defense plans?
The exact number that is loose, sir?
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
Roughly how many?
I can only tell you, sir, what we know about.
Well, that's 130, is that right?
I remember exactly what I said.
Yes, sir. I'm going to try to particularize for you if I can.
I'm in a hurry. I don't want the sun to go down while they're still in there if we can get them out.
Now, Mr. Welch made a statement. I raised the point of order that it was not A proper point of order.
I don't think that he recognized when things were turning against him. He kept on rambling on and on about point of order, and so on. And clearly the audience was losing all sympathy with him.
Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
He is censured on December 2nd, 1954, by the United States Senate. People are turning their backs on him. The reporters are laughing at him. He's invited no place. He gives a talk at Boscobel and nobody comes.
Oh, we were all delighted at his downfall. We were rubbing our hands to you know, how does America get rid of somebody like that?
The subcommittee considering charges against Senator McCarthy ends almost a month's proceedings in Washington, finding their fellow senator acted in a manner they call contemptuous and reprehensible. Senator Watkins of Utah headed the committee, which heard so much testimony it takes this cart to carry it.
I feel no different tonight than I did last night. I am very happy to have this circus ended so that we can get back to the work of digging out communism, corruption, treason in government. That job will start officially Monday morning after 10 months of forced inaction.
He crumbled at the end of his life, you know. He just sort of lost all confidence. It's like the wind went out of his sails and that everything that had propelled him sort of disappeared. And he was a kind of a wreck.
Cardinal Spellman, who was a friend, helped him and Jean adopt a child in the last months of his life, and they thought if he had somebody like a child to live for, he could control it, and it didn't work. At one point in the Senate cloakroom, he came in, and there were some senators sitting there drinking, and he pulled out a glass and a big bottle, and he said, "The physicians tell me that if I take another drop, I'll die." And he filled up the glass and drank it down and left the room. Joe McCarthy committed suicide.
The phone rang, and we just like started dinner. I'm not even sure what exact time he died. But someone called, and the phone was in the other room. We were in the kitchen, and my mother said, "Oh, no," in disbelief.
You know, when a politician dies, his 99% of his colleagues attend, but nobody cries. And most of them forget right away. That's politics.
Well, you can say that's the fate of populists. They die by they live by populism and die by populism. At the time, I was surprised that it happened so quickly.
I have to make a confession. It's not a very nice thing, hearing that Senator McCarthy had died. It's a nasty thing to say, but I think I felt about time.